started.
All right, so welcome to the CHAOSS Common Working Group meeting for October 29th. We have a few things on the agenda, so we'll start by looking at the action items and notes from the previous meeting, see if there are any action items. Matt, you were going to look at whether we needed to change things to reviews in any of the common metrics.
I think I've done a few of those. I think some of them might be in the PRs. Eek.
Okay.
I had 2 homeworks, and that was one I don't remember if I did or not.
Aha! You only
Shoot.
thought you did your homework. All right, so next, that was the only action item from last week. So
Okay.
but next was to look at the PRs and issues.
I'm pretty sure I did it.
Here, do you want me to share my screen, or does somebody with access, do you want to share your screen for the pull requests?
Yeah, I think Georg, I think you're leader or Vinod. Can you give Dawn co-host privilege?
I have given her the co-host.
I just changed the security settings so everyone can share.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ah!
Anything can happen. Okay, you should see pull requests.
I did it.
Look at that. You did some pull requests. All right, so let's have a look. Time to close, updating change requests. Yeah, reviews to change requests for the changes in the okay. So this looks good. We'll go ahead and merge that one. And then, whoops, the other pull request. Same thing, just have a quick look. That looks good. Look at that. Merged 2 pull requests in the first 5 minutes of the meeting.
Yay.
Call that a win. Issues, do we have anything? Doesn't look like we have anything new. Are there any of these issues that anybody wants to, any of the existing issues anyone wants to talk about?
Well, so I mean, the bottom one, we might be able to deal with today.
Yeah, we have on the agenda later, we have burstiness, language distribution, responsiveness metrics, and technical forks. So we can talk about any or all of those later in the agenda. Okay. So let's can you see the agenda now?
Yep.
Drag that into the right window. Okay, cool. So let's just have a quick look at the spreadsheet. Is there anything that has changed on the spreadsheet that we need to review?
No, last time we actually spent time in the call working on the burstiness metric. So
Okay.
most of it was spent doing editing on that.
Okay. Does anybody have anything that they want to change on the?
Probably the host to stop my video because I got up a few times.
I started to work on the 3 first time-related things that you can see there in considering. So just in case we want to move them to some other stage, we can review them later.
No, sorry, I had a thing happening I could deal with.
No worries. So do we want to move those to in progress, Daniel, since you've done some work on those?
They are in progress.
Yeah.
That's a good, yeah.
Is it the top 3 that are in progress?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll just change this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other changes to this?
All yellow.
Yellow. Okay. Now, so we have progress on the metrics. We have several of them that we can talk about. burstiness, language distribution, responsiveness, those three, and then the technical forks. Are there any of these that we know we want to talk about first? Are there any of these that aren't ready that we should push to next week?
You can push language distribution again.
I think technical fork is complete. It was reviewed in the last meeting, like last to last meeting. I just have to create a pull request on the side. So
Okay.
it's like done from every aspect. Maybe if you want to just have a look, we can do that.
No, I think if we already reviewed it in the last one, I think you can just do
Yes.
a pull request.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will just move this to the bottom. Okay, and then do we want to talk about burstiness first, or do we want to talk about responsiveness metrics?
You had a good talk on burstiness last time, and you might want to finish, but I have no strong preference.
Let's
I'm
try
okay.
to
There are a
go-
few things that I do need in burstiness. I'm sorry, Daniel.
Go ahead. No, I was saying that let's go to burstiness because we want to close that. That we were working on this first. So
I think it's pretty
Okay.
close to being complete.
Do you want to talk through this one, Matt?
Yeah, sure. So based on the last meeting we had spent a lot of time just kind of collecting ideas. You know how we just just spend like 15 minutes, everybody types stuff. And so I kind of had gone through it to clean up, repeated bullet points or things that maybe were in the description that should be in the objectives. You know what I mean? Just trying to create a more cohesive narrative around things. So honestly, the question I had to rephrase, I don't know if I love the question. It was written as a yes/no question originally, which I don't think is what we want. No other question for a metric is a yes/no question, so
Yeah.
So if you have comments on the question, let's just change it now. No problem there.
Should there be a comma here?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about
Ah,
without even describing what you're saying. And I thought so too, and then I didn't, and then I think I did, and then I didn't. now it's back.
Because it feels like the followed by a corresponding return to a typical pattern of activity is, otherwise it runs into the observed in a project and makes it sound
Yeah,
weird.
no, that's totally sounds good.
Anybody want to disagree with me who has better grammar skills than I do? Feel free. Okay. No, I like the question. I think it looks good.
Okay. The description, I think, was pretty well spelled out. Again, there were just some grammatical things that I cleaned up. I just tried to identify, we were just calling in the description. Oh, go ahead, Vinod.
Yeah. So is it how or why? Like reading the description feels like more of a why we have a burstiness because of the release cycle, because of the global pandemic, because of the hackathon, rather than how. How is more on the like procedural way that how this happens, but the answer or like the outcome I'm observing is more of a why.
Yeah, so I think that's a fair point. We had talked about this a little bit in the sense of how we come to understand burstiness. So is it with respect to us doing something and then trying to observe within the project why something has occurred? Or is it with just observing a burst and then trying to unpack why that burst occurred?
Right.
They're kind of two sides of the same coin. So what if we...
Oh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were done.
No, fire away.
I was just gonna say, I feel like the metric is a how metric, and you have examples which are sort of the why. But I feel like I'm not sure throughout the document whether we focused on the how or not, but it seems like the metric should be the how those are observed, as opposed to, and then, so the metric is how those are observed, but I think the interpretation that one would make after you've gathered this data is kind of the why. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
One of my thoughts just now was, instead of observed in a project, right at the very end there on the question, yep, understood in a project. Would that help alleviate? Instead of the word observed, replace it with the word understood.
Well, I think what Don was saying is that we are just observing. We're not really trying to understand them, I think, right? Is that right? Because it feels like in other metrics, we just identify, like we identify increases or decreases in activity or diverse people, groups, leadership, like, you know, things like that. But we don't really go into like, why is that happening? We kind of leave it to the person. I think.
Yeah, I feel like the understanding and interpretation is sort of an exercise left to the reader, right? So it's
Fair
like
enough.
It's what the person who's interpreting the metrics has to do.
Sort it out. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did, if you see that, okay, so in description, the text leading into those bullet points says examples of root causes are these things. And then the first bullet point in objectives is tying back to those root causes. So I don't know if that's clear. We had some repetition in the objectives, and so I just rolled all that repetition into this phrase root causes.
I personally think it's totally fine to just give some examples to help people kind of wrap their head around like why we would care about this or why, you know, what would cause something like that. So I personally am totally fine with having the examples in there. And then as the objective is identifying the impact. So, you know, like we're just saying, yeah, that's just my opinion.
Okay. So case in point, like that's what I was doing through this document, just trying to tighten things up. Like those are the root causes. Let's just refer to those in one bullet point down below. So I even tried to make all of the lists pretty, if you don't notice.
Yep.
I had actually at one point taken one of the longer words and put it like, or one of the longer phrases and put it third, just to see if it would bother anybody. Which I'm guessing it would have.
This is very organized. Yes.
It's very satisfying. So anyway.
It seems like it would even match like a burst. You know, like it's like sharp increase and then a deep. I see what you did there, Matt.
I would recommend having a longer one in the middle so that we can see a burst going down again.
Yes. So like the third or fourth from the end should be the longest one, and then they go back down.
Yes.
I can do that. So for the visualizations, I thought maybe we could get this done right now. Maybe something from Augur or something from Cauldron or Grimoire Lab that just shows a spike. I mean, I think we left the last meeting by saying that should be pretty easy to visualize. It would just be a spike.
Yeah, it's actually, we have a lot of graphs that show those kinds of things already. I think it's bursts are already visible, and I think we're just labeling something that exists in many of the visualizations we already provide.
So could you grab an Augur image?
Yeah,
that shows.
I may have one right handy here.
That shows that.
I've been going through my Augur is what I'm assigning my classes right now, so I've been going through different examples.
Okay.
Let me see if I should have one of the 80 tabs I have open. There we go.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, exactly.
Both of you action items.
Yep.
So
Georg,
should I
are you-
include the label of the metric that is bursty, or should I
Sure.
just? Okay.
Yeah. Georg, are you on right now? Or
He
Daniel?
stepped away just as I gave him an action item. Too bad for him. No choice now. He's stuck with it.
And then the data collection strategies. This felt like I went through everything, right? And then I hit the section and, like the end of a paper, and it's like, it just kind of is a anticlimactic thud. And so that's kind of what it felt like to me. Like like in academic papers, there are these things like called like future research or limitations. And a lot of people are just like, and it's a really ungraceful way to end a paper. And that's kind of what it felt like to me here.
Oh.
So I don't know what we want to do with this.
We might
And maybe
even-
it's fine.
I genuinely wish that Google Docs would get a caption function. Did I put it in the right place?
Yeah, sure. Looks a little fuzzy. Is that just me?
Could be that it's me. Let me try to see if I have a way to get I believe I can get a higher quality image of it. I cheated and used Sketch.
It might be better just to send the higher quality image to Matt, and you can insert it when you do the markdown. Because I have found that putting images into Google Docs and then getting them back out, you sometimes lose some quality depending
Sometimes crap is what
Yep.
you're saying.
I am, yes. Sometimes it's crap.
I certainly had that experience with my talk where everything looks beautiful in my PowerPoint and looked beautiful on my copy of the video, but then was grainy in the broadcast. I have no idea why.
That was a problem with the broadcasts.
In general?
Yeah, some of them were just really grainy, and some of them were perfect, and I have no idea why.
Yeah, I mean, I sent a very high quality version, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think in talking to some other people, I think it depends. Like there was one presentation where several people were complaining that it was really grainy on their screen, and several of us were like, it looks perfect on mine. So I think it's just variability in the platform.
It did look grainy on my own screen, so.
Yeah. Okay, so anyways, the data collection strategies. Do we want to talk about?
I guess it's just maybe just your impression. Does it end flat? Should I try to work this out a little bit more? Should we all try to work it out a little bit more? I don't know.
I'm curious about the qualitative, because here we are trying to figure out why things are happening, but is that usually what we do in the metrics? It feels like we just kind of stop with, here's how to get the data, and then it's kind of up to the person to figure out why. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I was drawn a little bit to some of the D&I metrics where the qualitative questions they do seem a little bit more trying to get at some of the root causes. So like if I think about some of the stuff that Ruth has been working on in D&I, there's a little bit more, I think. But maybe we don't even want it here. Maybe like we don't have to have this qualitative section. It's certainly not a requirement.
But I felt these are the important questions which help the user of this metric to assess, like, why do you contribute, or why do you believe a particular burst occurred?
I personally, I think it's fine.
Okay.
I mean,
It's not a perfect set of questions, but it at least kind of locates you enough, you think? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Anybody else have any more feedback on the metric? Is Georg back yet? Nope. Well, we'll check in with him on his action item later. Okay.
Actually, just I'll tag him on that and then he'll see it.
Oh yeah, perfect. So we'll get rid of Sean's action item since he's already got that.
And I'm emailing y'all the SVG and PNG versions. Not sure which is going to come through better in whatever tools we use to assemble these things.
Cool. Okay, Daniel. Which one of these would you like to talk about first?
Can I ask one quick question? Is this ready to go? Should I do the PR? I mean, do you think that's good to go?
I think so.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Well, any of the three, because the three of them are kind of interrelated. So the first one, time between iterations, well, the time between each of the cycles that we may have in a code review process, and then the other two are kind of splitting each of those times into two more, which are the time waiting for a reviewer action, which is when someone submits something, and the time waiting for a submitter action, which is when there is a for instance, problem with the testing, or the reviewer is requiring improvements. So that's more or less this all about.
Okay.
So
well, let's start with this one. Why don't you just walk us through it?
Yeah. Do you want me to explain this a bit, what I've written down here, or we want to work on this as we've done on other occasions? Any preference?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oh, again, sorry. So we can I can either explain what I've written down here, or we can go and each of us read the text and then we work on our own for a few minutes. So what do you prefer?
To be honest, the latter, just us reading it and working for a few minutes, seems to work really well in all the working groups. So. But I leave it to Dawn.
Oh, that's fine. That sounds good. So we'll just take a few minutes to read it and add some comments. The first comment is we seem to be missing a question. Okay, someone just added that. Can we talk for a minute about iterations versus review cycles?
Yeah, I'm
'Cause
getting a little hung up on that too.
Yeah, because I see Matt, I see you correcting iterations to review cycles. The way I was interpreting this, and Daniel, you can tell me if I'm right or not, is that like the review cycle is sort of the whole thing, but what you're measuring is I don't know, maybe Daniel, can you talk more about that? Maybe now I've confused myself.
Yeah, I was using both terms in the same way.
Okay.
They were synonyms in this case, yeah.
Okay.
So those are each of the iterations we have within a whole code review process.
Okay.
With all of these changes, we can see that this is certain poor English I used.
So
this is what all of them look like when we start.
Oh yeah.
This has nothing to do with your English. This is just us being nitpicky.
So how about maybe then this sentence right here at the top of implementation?
Mm-hmm.
What is a review cycle versus a code review process?
Well, for me, the review cycle is when it's when you ask for changes. So a pull request can be issued, it can be reviewed, and it can either be approved or the person reviewing it can ask for changes. And that would constitute a milestone starting another review cycle. Is that what you're thinking of, Daniel?
Yeah, but perhaps the difference between what I wrote here is that each review cycle is starting when we have a new submission from the original submitter. So it's not when we have the review like, okay, you need improvements.
Oh, right.
But
right.
We have a new version.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So like if you give me a request for changes, the next review cycle's timer doesn't start till I give you those changes. Right.
Well, let me ask this then. What's a code review process?
Okay, so the vocabulary I was using is code review process is the whole change set, for instance, in Gerrit, or the whole pull request discussions that we may have in GitHub. Each of the iterations are when we have someone sending a piece of code, for instance, me sending this, and then you are now the reviewers, so you are asking for improvements. So now I need to take action here and send a new version of this document, right? Kind of. So that's a new review cycle or iteration. We can use another vocabulary, but this is the vocabulary I was using here.
I think that helps. So the implementation, the time is measured as the time between each of the review cycles within merge request?
Yes.
I think we should use change request.
Change request, yeah.
Or change request, I'm sorry, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think people have mostly gone through it. So let's
Is it between 2 review cycles or couple of review cycles?
So those should be sequential, so one after the other review cycles. So if we have 5 iterations, for instance, is the time between the one and the second, the first and the second one, the second and the third one, the third and the fourth and the fifth.
Okay.
But not between the first and the fourth.
each subsequent review cycle.
Yes.
That better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's go back to the top. What do people think of the question? Because I think that was added after most of us had gone through this.
Mhm.
Any comments on the question?
Yeah, so is it the time between review cycles, or is it the time within a review cycle? Does that make sense?
I'm not sure.
It doesn't make sense? Because if it doesn't make sense, then I don't know. Then I'm confused myself. So there's a review cycle, right? And that's where some work gets done. Is that correct? And so is it about understanding the time of review cycles? So for example, if a first review cycle took 10 minutes and the next review cycle took 40 minutes as part of a change request, and the next one took an hour and the next one took 2 hours, I'd be like, wow, each of my review cycles seems to be trending towards longer. Or is it the time between when a review cycle is complete and then the start of the next review cycle? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's this second case. So we are not starting a new review cycle till we have that new version. If not, basically you remain open like all the time.
Okay.
So it's the time between review cycles for a single contribution, for a particular contribution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As opposed to the time before review, because so there are two ways I could interpret this question. One is, what are the time between review cycles for a particular contribution? So I submit a contribution, I get some feedback, I resubmit it. Or you could look at this as the time between review cycles period. So I submit something, it gets reviewed. Matt submits something else completely different and it gets reviewed. You could look at the time between those review cycles. But I don't think that's what you mean. You mean for the same contribution, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we are talking about the same piece of code, so it makes sense that people are working around the same, in the same context. So probably in the same pull request, probably it's not a good practice that we have one person adding, improving the about section in the website, and then suddenly another one add a commit improving the name of the board members, for instance. Those are really different changes, right? So does it make sense to have to be both commits in the same pull request? Probably not.
So something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, going back to what Matt was asking, I think if we look at the objectives of the metric, it looks like almost it's looking for both of those cases, the time back and forth between each person, the submitter and the maintainer, and then the time between total iterations.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? It's not.
It does, but I think the way that Dawn has written the question helped me, so that it's within a single contribution. It's understanding the time of Daniel requesting a change to Dawn and her ability to make that change.
Dawn, do you mind opening this example that I have in the chat? Just an example coming from Wikimedia. So then we can point to the time. Okay, so as you can see there on the left, like close to the end, it says files finding, and then it says patch set 3. So a change set in Gerrit is based on several patches, and patch is an iteration in this case. So if you go down, you scroll down, please, then you have all of the history here. So the review cycle or each of the iterations would be the time between the line number 3 and the line number 1. So March 903 minus the same day, year 855. So this is 8 minutes. This is one review cycle. Then the next review cycle, the line and we see patch set 3, and we see patch set 2. Whatever that time is. And then the third review cycle is still open. Well, I don't know if this is closed or not. But if this is not closed, then the third review cycle is still open, so times keeps flowing. So maybe it's clear in this way, I don't know.
Yes, that helps me. Thanks.
Is there a better way to phrase this?
There are certainly different ways to phrase it.
Well, let's leave it. I'm gonna accept this for now, and then we can change it later, because I feel like iterations. I mean, those are patches. Those are submissions. Those are, yeah, I don't know. So what's the best use of our remaining 4 minutes? Should we accept a bunch of these changes? Are there specific ones we want to discuss? Should we have Daniel take all of this feedback, go back and bring it back at the next meeting?
Can do it.
Okay.
I have one comment. Could you take a screenshot of that Garrett picture and put it in as a visualization? Because that was really helpful to me.
Okay. It's all fuzzy, but here
yeah, at least a placeholder is there.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
I'll put the link so we don't lose it. Okay. Cool. All right. So we're going to give Daniel the action item. Daniel.
I will add the other 2 documents with the vocabulary we've been using in this one. So the other 2 times is basically this ping pong match between the submitter and the reviewer. That's all.
So I gave you the action item for the other 2 to kind of update it with the consistent language that we talked about, the iterations, review cycles, that sort of thing. Okay. Anything else we need to talk about before we wrap this up?
Me getting my task done. You can shame me if necessary.
Pushing to next meeting.
All right.
All right, cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. And
Likewise.
We'll see you all back at this meeting in 2 weeks and in
A very short period.
all the other CHAOSS meetings as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.